to happen to this country in a long time, I think.
From my perspective, the really important that democracy prevails.
He will infuse many more people to come out of the cupboard and say that they are Brexit supporters and get the message out so that we can be really ready for a general election.
No one in this country has invested more time, more effort, more energy or more emotion into getting the independence of our country from the European Union than me.
For me, Nigel represents somebody who is absolutely honest.
On the 12th of April, I still remember I was coming back from somewhere in Chesterton, pressed play, I was like, what's this video? Mine was blown, paid my £25 the same night.
I'm not normally politically motivated, but this has really made me feel strongly that we must support Nigel in his efforts to make sure that Brexit happens.
It's what people voted for, so it needs to happen. Anything else just shouldn't be allowed.
It's just like we're being cheated out of something that the majority of people have voted for.
If you want the Brexit you voted for, you have to vote for the Brexit Party. You're not going to get it with any of the other parties.
It's a great change to see people like Nigel to be able to represent the people, really.
Brilliant, brilliant. Best thing to happen to this country in a long time, I think.
From my perspective, the really important that democracy prevails.
He will infuse many more people to come out of the cupboard and say that they are Brexit supporters and get the message out so that we can be really ready for a general election.
No one in this country has invested more time, more effort, more energy or more emotion into getting the independence of our country from the European Union than me.
For me, Nigel represents somebody who is absolutely honest.
On the 12th of April, I still remember I was coming back from somewhere in Chesterton, pressed play, I was like, what's this video? Mine was blown, paid my £25 the same night.
I'm not normally politically motivated, but this has really made me feel strongly that we must support Nigel in his efforts to make sure that Brexit happens.
It's what people voted for, so it needs to happen. Anything else just shouldn't be allowed.
It's just like we're being cheated out of something that the majority of people have voted for.
If you want the Brexit you voted for, you have to vote for the Brexit Party. You're not going to get it with any of the other parties.
It's a great change to see people like Nigel to be able to represent the people, really.
Brilliant, brilliant. Best thing to happen to this country in a long time, I think.
From my perspective, the really important that democracy prevails.
He will infuse many more people to come out of the cupboard and say that they are Brexit supporters and get the message out so that we can be really ready for a general election.
No one in this country has invested more time, more effort, more energy or more emotion into getting the independence of our country from the European Union than me.
For me, Nigel represents somebody who is absolutely honest.
On the 12th of April, I still remember I was coming back from somewhere in Chesterton, pressed play, I was like, what's this video? Mine was blown, paid my £25 the same night.
I'm not normally politically motivated, but this has really made me feel strongly that we must support Nigel in his efforts to make sure that Brexit happens.
It's what people voted for, so it needs to happen. Anything else just shouldn't be allowed.
It's just like we're being cheated out of something that the majority of people have voted for.
If you want the Brexit you voted for, you have to vote for the Brexit Party. You're not going to get it with any of the other parties.
It's a great change to see people like Nigel to be able to represent the people, really.
Brilliant, brilliant. Best thing to happen to this country in a long time, I think. Yeah.
From my perspective, the really important that democracy prevails.
He will infuse many more people to come out of the cupboard and say that they are Brexit supporters and get the message out so that we can be really ready for a general election.
No one in this country has invested more time, more effort, more energy or more emotion into getting the independence of our country from the European Union than me.
Well, a very good morning to you, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning. No. You can do so much better. Good morning. Very good. Can I just say thank you so much for bringing the wonderful weather with you. It's lovely, isn't it? Really, really lovely. Well, sorry? It is good. Okay, it is good weather. Right. Hello, my name is Dr. David Bull. I'm a medical doctor. I'm a television presenter. I am a very passionate campaigner, and I am delighted to say I am a Brexit Party MEP for the North West, and as of yesterday, I am now the parliamentary candidate for Sedgefield for the Brexit Party, and I am thrilled and delighted. Now, I have to tell you that I have spent my entire adult life campaigning to improve people's health, because I believe it is really, really important. And I've spent time campaigning for some really important stuff. For example, every single child now in Britain is screened for the life-threatening condition cystic fibrosis so we can intervene early. I've been fighting to improve elderly care because older people are treated appallingly in this country. And I've also been fighting to improve our hospitals. Many of our hospitals are filthy, and that is not acceptable. And these are really important campaigns. But the campaign we are fighting now, this campaign, Fighting for Democracy, is the hardest campaign that I and all of you are fighting, because we are fighting for the very future of this country. We are fighting for democracy. I never thought I would say that. We are fighting for democracy, and we are fighting to make the voices of those 17.4 million people who voted to leave, we need them to be heard. And what is so frustrating is the Labour, Liberal, metropolitan elite just doesn't want to hear the result of the referendum, and that is simply not acceptable. You see, fundamentally, this is about democracy. We voted to leave. We haven't left. That is not acceptable. And people keep saying, well, you didn't know what you were voting for, did you? Did you know what you were voting for? Yes, we voted to leave. There wasn't, do you want to leave with a deal? Do you want to leave with no deal? Do you want to leave with any other option? We voted to leave, and we must leave. Now, the Brexit Party, and I'm very proud to be part of the Brexit Party, we have achieved incredible things. If you think we are 7 months old, we're only 7 months old. What's that? We're only a babby, that's right. And we are now the largest single party in the European Parliament. There are 28 of us, 28 members of the European Parliament, which is extraordinary. And I'll tell you, we have completely shaped the political agenda. Nigel, his sterling work and the work of the MEPs and all of the Brexit Party has completely changed the political agenda. We have given a home to 17.4 million people who voted to leave. And do you know what? Without us, Theresa May would still be Prime Minister and still be hammering through that terrible deal. So it is thanks to the Brexit Party that she isn't there. And do you know, it's amazing, because her deal, exactly a year ago today, was the day they agreed on that deal. And extraordinarily, guess what? We're still in the European Union. Now, this is a really pivotal moment, because I also think we've done one other thing that's really, really important. We've held Boris's feet to the fire, and he has given us 2 major concessions. I don't know if you saw this, but he has promised the transition period will now not go on longer than December of next year. And he has also promised that what he wants to do is to negotiate a Canada-style FTA. These are really important changes, and without us, these changes simply would not have happened. And you know what? We're going to take him at his word. We are going to believe him, no ifs and no buts. But make no mistake, he absolutely has to honour his promises that he has given us. The problem is, of course, do you trust Boris? Well, that's the problem, isn't it? Because, of course, Boris said he would never annex Northern Ireland. And, of course, what's he done? He's put a border in the Irish Sea, and he has annexed Northern Ireland. He also said, well, actually, the fact there will be seamless trade across Northern Ireland and the rest of the United Kingdom. but now it appears that we're going to have customs checks. So in fact, Boris cannot be trusted. If we stood down and let Boris just carry on, I do not believe he could be trusted. And we have to keep his feet to the fire, and we have to make sure that he actually gives us a Brexit that we can be truly proud of. I actually think there's something very interesting going on, because actually we are getting now a lot of abuse from lots of political parties, and that's because they're scared. People are writing to me every day telling me to stand down, and weirdly they're telling me it's my fault that Brexit hasn't been delivered. That is simply not true. They are also saying the Brexit Party is splitting the Brexit vote. I'd argue that in Labour Leave seats, that actually it's the Conservative Party that is splitting the Brexit vote. And we need to get Brexit, and the best way of doing that is by having a Leave alliance. And I know many of our candidates have been subject to horrific abuse. You wouldn't believe the sort of stuff that we're being sent every single day. We've lost friends, we've lost family, and it's all because we believe passionately in fighting for something that we truly believe, which is a free, independent, self-governing country. We talk a great deal about changing politics for good. And you know, the thing that frustrates me and many of us is that when it comes to election, have you noticed suddenly the magic money tree has appeared? So all the politicians are now promising, well, you can have this, you can have lots of hospitals, you can have schools. Well, it's nonsense. Of course, this is not going to happen. And these empty promises just always amount to absolutely nothing. So let's talk about where I'm standing in the northeast, because there are huge problems there, and Labour has ignored them. They've been in power in the northeast, and they have done nothing. There are huge rates of mental health issues, huge problems with drug and alcohol misuse, elderly people not being cared for, and also long waits for cancer treatment. It is not acceptable, and we have to change it. And as a doctor, the thing that I find incredibly frustrating and unfair is that where you live should not determine the treatment you get, and it should not determine when you die. This must stop. And so what I will tell you is that if we are elected, then members of Parliament from the Brexit Party, we really will change politics for good, because what we're going to do, we want to deliver better healthcare and better hospitals. We want to deliver better housing. We want to deliver better education. And what's more, we want to build a cohesive, better, united kingdom. And finally, and most importantly, we must bring an end once and for all to the north-south divide. And that's why your votes and your support for the Brexit Party is really important. So thank you very much indeed. Well, we have a fantastic lineup of speakers for you today. I'm delighted now to introduce the first of those, our parliamentary candidate from Kingston upon Hull North. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together, please, and welcome Derrick Abram.
My standing as a PPC candidate for Hull North has been fuelled by my mounting sense of anger. I wasn't angry in the run-up to the referendum in 2016. I was just keen to understand the issues like many, many other people. People were telling me their reasons for why they wanted to choose Remain. 3 of the key ones they kept telling me was to be able to use their mobile phones overseas, cheap holidays, and better the devil you know. Now, I happen to think they're pretty fragile reasons. All right, so, however, I accepted that's their choice. I wanted to look back to that time, and I looked at what the role of the Electoral Commission was around that time. Stay with me on this one, because before the referendum, the Electoral Commission completed one of their key tasks on behalf of Parliament. And I quote from their website: "Look at the wording of the proposed referendum question to make sure it is easy for voters to understand. And as part of our assessment, we carry out research with the public." So they checked with the public that they understood that question. How many times have people told you that you didn't? Incorrectly. Parliament accepted that work from the Electoral Commission in full. Parliament therefore acknowledged that the choice in front of the people, in front of the voters, was easy to understand. My anger grew in the 3 years since then. My anger has got stronger as I've witnessed politicians and wealthy individuals who have just challenged the outcome of the referendum to stop the implementation of democracy. Referendums must never ever be reduced to being expensive opinion polls or a cynical attempt just to appease an electorate. Many are claiming that the mere passage of time allows them to discount totally that referendum. I say twaddle. Focusing more locally on Hull, the city of my birth, I was deeply angry that in the more than 3 years now being paid the high salaries that they have been paid, the 3 Hull Labour MPs have consistently, 100%, voted against the wishes of that 67% of Leave voters in Hull. I cannot understand why they did that, but they've tried to explain it as saying they voted with their conscience. Matters of conscience are things such as the death penalty, abortion, corporal punishment in schools, that type of thing. They don't happen often in politics. But they said they voted with their consciences. They did not. That's just an excuse to get them off the hook. They voted as they were told to by their party. Strangely, they voted behind a leader that was renowned for not voting with his party. They failed to do that. Okay. Our economic policy and trading relationships with the countries are not other countries are not matters of conscience. Okay. The work of the political classes over these last decades has left the city of my birth as one of the 2 most deprived cities in the UK. 45% of the area of Hull is officially defined as deprived areas. Unacceptable. Hypocrisy fuels my anger. Recently, we've got Jo Swinson. She's telling Nicola Sturgeon to accept the Indy referendum results, and she's not even willing to accept the one in 2016, which is UK-wide. Amazing. In my view, personally, the House of Commons, just a personal view, is the most high-profile boardroom in the country. In any other boardroom I'm aware of in this country, that would be unacceptable behaviour from our MPs. Now, not all of them have been that bad, but too many have. I'll finish by saying, your vote in this general election gives you the chance to say to those MPs that you no longer wish to believe should be in their jobs, to say, you're fired. Right? Put bluntly, you gave them their jobs, you can take them away. Right? Enjoy your democratic vote. Enjoy it, people. Enjoy.
Thank you very much, Derrick. Thank you, Derrick. I thought that was brilliant. You gave them the vote. You can take it away again. And I think that's a very pertinent point indeed. Please will you welcome now our next speaker, the parliamentary candidate for Kingston upon Hull East, Martin Hall.
If you'd asked me a year ago whether I was going to be standing for Parliament, I would have laughed in your face. I'm a pretty simple guy. I'm a soldier, I'm an ecologist, and that's where my expertise normally lie. But I'm also the silent majority. I'm the many who just get on with life, working hard to pay off the mortgage, grow a business, and who normally refuses to be distracted by the shenanigans in Westminster. But over the years, I've become increasingly distracted, increasingly disappointed by what we've seen going on in Parliament. I'm a Yorkshireman. I expect fair play and honesty, and I'll tell you my mind, often when whether you've asked for it or not. And then came the European referendum. On the 23rd of June 2016, a little over 3.5 years ago, the people of this great country went to the polling stations to decide its fate. The question was simple. Should the United Kingdom remain a member of the European Union or leave the European Union? Remain or leave? Despite being sagely told by betters in Westminster, the Liberal elite in London, and vast swathes of the media that the sky would fall in and a plague would be brought upon all our houses, the good people of the United Kingdom voted to leave. However, over the last 3 years, and despite many false promises, all we have seen is a Parliament seemingly dead set against implementing the will of the people. A Parliament that was once the envy of the world has become a cabal, openly defying its citizens and bringing shame upon a once proud house. They appear intent on seceding the sovereignty of a country that once stood alone against a different European power. A country that was once the only hope of free people throughout Europe trying to overthrow a regime being forced upon them. But what do you do with a Parliament that does not listen? A Parliament that thinks it knows best. A Parliament that thinks the little people just didn't really understand the question or what leave actually meant. We vote them out and we replace them with one that will. It is that simple. What the last 3 years has shown us is that you cannot trust the three main parties to deliver Brexit on their own. It can only be accomplished with a new party, a party that believes in implementing the will of the people, a party that believes the country can and should once again stand proud outside of the European project, forging its own future. That party, my friends, is the Brexit Party. And my name is Martin Hall, and I'm the parliamentary candidate for the Brexit Party in Hull East. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much indeed. Super, thank you very much. We come to the third of our parliamentary candidates now. This lady may be familiar to you. She is standing in Kingston upon Hull West and Hessel. Ladies and gentlemen, please will you welcome Michelle Dewberry.
Good morning. How are we? So, I'll start by telling you a little story. Last night, I was with a businessman who is a respectable, successful businessman in the north, and he took me to a side, and he told me a dark secret, very quietly, very discreetly. And do you know what his dark secret was that he had to almost whisper to me? His secret is that he is a Brexiteer. And I felt it quite sad that he had to almost whisper this to me quietly in the corner. And I'll tell you for why. This country has a majority of Brexiteers. We are not the minority, we are the majority. But yet Brexiteers, over and over and over again, have been ignored, they have been marginalised, and we have been stigmatised. And it is wrong. We are in a situation where the will of the people, the will of the Brexiteers, of which I'm assuming there are Brexiteers in here, am I right, am I wrong? We have Brexiteers among us. We are nice, good, decent people. And I do believe, firmly I believe, that when you decide as a country to offer a referendum, the terms and conditions of which are very simple and very clear, they are as follows. You need a simple majority, and you will enact the outcome of that referendum. I think when you have that as a situation, it is wrong, fundamentally wrong, not to follow up on that outcome. And it is for that reason that ever since 2016, I have been very, very passionate and very consistent in my defence of Brexit and my strong belief that it must be enacted. And I think it is an absolute travesty that we sit here today in 2019, and some of you may recall that in 2017, I stood for election as an independent candidate. I stood on a Brexit ticket. Never did I imagine that 2 years down the line, I would be standing here again, and literally almost nothing has changed. We certainly have made very little progress. And I'm sorry, but I think that is wrong. Do you agree? Yeah. Good. It'd be very awful if you didn't. I'd be in the wrong place. So it brings me to the north. Here we are. We're in the place that I call home. I am running again in Hull West and Hessle, the place that I was born and bred, and I'm very passionate and very committed about. And you will have noticed that recently, saying that you support the North, it's become almost a cool and trendy thing to do. It's fascinating, isn't it, now that there's an election, that everybody wants to be up north. Everyone wants to be talking to and embracing northern people. The Northern Powerhouse has been a sentence that has been on people's lips for years. It's meant very, very little. I heard Jeremy Corbyn talking about the floods the other day, and he was using those floods as a way of getting some political support. He was saying, I bet, you know, if the floods was happening down south, the Tories would call it a national emergency. Well, my response to that is, hang on a second, because as many of you will recall, Hull flooded in 2007. And in fact, one of my school friends very sadly lost his life in Hessle as a result of those floods. And I recall, as many of you guys will recall, that the response to that was substandard at best. And this whole north-south divide has gone on for decades. We are neglected, we are routinely ignored, and I firmly believe that Brexit provides a fantastic opportunity for us to be serious about the North, because when we're taking control and powers, or whatever you want to call it, back from Brussels, why should it centralise and return and centralise in Westminster? I don't believe that it should. I believe that the opportunity of Brexit provides us with a situation where we can properly, truly rethink what we want this country to look like and do further devolution and deeper devolution of powers and redistribute budget, control, strategy from Westminster and properly distribute it up to the north to give us, and we don't want to be an afterthought. I'm tired of being an afterthought. I do a lot of work in and around London, and there is a Westminster bubble. And I am telling you, no matter what these people say, now that there's an election campaign going on, the North is and consistently has been an afterthought. And I'm sorry, but it has to stop. Thank you. It leads me to my final point, which is I truly believe that politics is broken. As you will have seen over the last recent weeks, months, we have been consistently talking about or hearing people talk about voting, tactical voting, alliances, this, that, and the other. If that does not show you that we have a political system that is broken, I don't know what else will. We should have a parliament that truly reflects the voice and the desires and the beliefs of the people. The first past the post system that we currently have does not give us a parliament that represents us. The Brexit Party, which is one of the reasons I've decided to stand here for this party, they truly believe in political reform, as do I. They truly believe in making sure that the systems and the frameworks are changed to allow Parliament to truly represent everybody. They also believe in things like reforming, if not scrapping, the House of Lords. Again, I am firmly, firmly behind this. And I will end very simply by saying this. If you're a Brexit voter, particularly a Brexit voter in these regions, we have been let down. Our towns, our city, has been under Labour dominance for as long as certainly I can remember. They have the control over the MP seats, often very much as a majority in the local councils, and it has to stop. We are being told time and time and time again now that people's failings are because of other people's successes. We are being pitted against each other. We are constantly being told that in order to succeed, we have to pull people down. I don't believe that. I believe, and I desperately desire, anybody to be as successful as they choose to be. But that isn't achieved by pulling people down. It is achieved by pulling people up, raising aspirations, raising educational standards, and crucially, working hard to get the support of the voters and delivering on the promises that we made. And I've been told in some instances that I'm wrong to stand in this election and that I am splitting a vote. And I will be very, very clear, and I will respond like this. I am not splitting the vote. There is nobody that owns your vote other than you yourselves. What you need to do is vote for whomever the party is, and of course I'm standing here, so I hope it's going to be the Brexit Party. But do not allow people to make you feel bad. Do not allow people to tell you who you need to vote for, and do not fall for all of this nonsense about tactical voting and this, that and the other. I believe, and I will always maintain, I think Labour, particularly in this area, has taken us for granted. We voted overwhelmingly for Brexit, almost 70%. And time and time and time again, we have been ignored. Time again, our MPs that represent us, they have voted for further correlation with Europe. They have voted against our wishes as Brexiteers. And I, for one, have had enough. I'm Michelle Dewberry. I'm very proud to say that I'm standing for the Brexit Party in Hull West and Hessle. I'm very much looking forward to the next few weeks, and I hope that you will follow us on this journey, and I truly hope that together and consistently and going forward, we manage to change politics for good. Thank you.
Super. Thank you very much indeed, Michelle. I think you can see, look, 3 amazing parliamentary candidates. And I think the thing, hopefully, that comes across is the drive, the determination. The fact is actually, for all of us, to put our heads above the parapet and really be shot at, which is what is going on at the moment, has taken a lot of courage. And so I think we should congratulate them for standing, because it really is a really selfless act. So thank you very much. You know, I feel as though I've been in the Brexit Party for a very long time. It seems to have gone on for years, but it hasn't, of course, because my journey started only a matter of months ago. There is one man who is truly inspirational. He has fought all his life for democracy. He has fought to make sure that we can leave the shackles of the EU, this veneer of democracy. I never expected in a million years to share a stage with Nigel Farage. But here we are, we're fighting together, and he has the most incredible energy. I don't know where he gets it from. I don't think he sleeps, actually. So let's just, before we meet him, let's just have a look at what he got up to yesterday.
What I did on Monday was not an easy thing to do. But I did it because I thought the moment had come when I really ought to put country before party. But I did it because I thought the moment had come. If Brexit doesn't get done, it's not because of me. I've done my utmost. It's they who refuse to work with us. And I think one of the reasons is they genuinely fear us. They genuinely fear us, get our voice there in the House of Commons. What the Conservatives have done every single day is they have put party before country.
Please welcome to the stage, Nigel Farage.
Good morning, everybody. Great to be here on stage in, this is Leave country, isn't it? You know, 70% Leave is quite low for some of these constituencies. So I'm absolutely in the heart of Leave country, and in the heart, I think, of a part of England that feels very, very let down by Parliament, our political class, because it's 3.5 years on and we've still not got Brexit. So that's why I set up the Brexit Party 6 months ago. It was obvious to me we would just limp on with Theresa May as our Prime Minister. Wasn't she just the worst ever? And that I felt actually the forces for a second referendum were gathering. So we set up the Brexit Party, we stunned everybody in the space of 6 weeks, we completely reset the political agenda, we got a new Prime Minister, and here we are now facing what could be a very, very decisive, perhaps even historic general election. And I'm on stage here today with some of our local candidates, and we particularly welcome new girl, Michelle Dewberry. It's her first day with us. And anyone that's watched her on The Pledge or anywhere else knows she is a fearsome debater and somebody with true conviction in her heart. I think we're all very, very pleased to have you with us standing in this great fight. I'm also conscious, being in Yorkshire today, of those in this county and surrounding counties who are having a really, really miserable time of it with the flooding. And I hear a lot of talk about improved flood defences, but I am slightly struck, having visited Somerset a few years ago that went through this, very much the same problem, that it's okay dealing with the symptoms of these disasters, but we maybe need to think a bit more about some of the causes. And yes, we do need to think about how we dredge our rivers and how we maintain our waterways. I won't get into EU directives and whether they've caused it, but spare a thought for all of those poor people, and it's still raining, and the prospects are it won't get much better. Now, you probably think, or used to think, that we live in a 21st century democracy. At least you might have thought that, until every promise that was made during the referendum, after the referendum, in the manifestos of 2017, were going to deliver the will of the people. We're going to deliver Brexit. And Brexit's not difficult. We voted to leave the European Union and its institutions so that we could be an independent, self-governing country. That is what Brexit's about, isn't it? And yet the Labour Party seemed to think that you didn't know what you voted for. Did you know what you voted for? Well, they don't seem to think so, because they're going to ask you to do it all again. Indeed, Diane Abbott, I thought, if she loses her seat, she becomes a mathematics professor, so I am told. But Diane Abbott set out the Labour Party position beautifully on Question Time the other week. They are going to go back to Brussels, negotiate another deal that'll be even worse, I suspect, than the one we're currently facing. They're then going to put that to a referendum. It'll be Remain against the form of Remain they've negotiated, and they will campaign against the deal that they, as a government, have negotiated. I mean, you just simply couldn't make it up. But of course, the degree of contempt with which they're treating 5 million Labour Leave voters is astonishing. They clearly think they can get away with it. And what I noticed back in May was that the Brexit Party's highest scoring parts of the country were those with the highest number of Labour MPs. I don't think that the Labour Party, which now clearly is more about Hoxton than it is about Hull, I don't think the Labour Party get it. I think it's been taken over by the North London intellectuals. They're miles away in every sense from traditional working families, some of whom have supported them now since the end of the First World War. There is a complete and utter disconnect, and what I've noticed, I've been in the valleys of South Wales, up in the northwest of England, up in the northeast, and indeed in Labour parts of East London yesterday. The one thing I do notice everywhere in traditional Labour areas is there is no love and no enthusiasm for Jeremy Corbyn whatsoever. And I think my biggest prediction I can make right now is that very large numbers of people who often vote Labour but aren't necessarily particularly politically motivated, they're going to stay at home. And that gives us a phenomenal opportunity in parts of the country like this. Seats in Hull, for example, that voted by over 70% to leave, now being represented by Labour MPs that are Remainers and want the people of Hull to vote again in a false choice second referendum. It is in seats like this, with candidates of the calibre that you've seen on this stage this morning, men and women that are not doing this because they want a grubby career in politics. They're doing it because they're prepared to stand up for their principles, for what they believe in, for actually democracy. You know, the very gift that was given to us, defended and fought for. And we remembered those that made the sacrifice for us to be free last Sunday in ceremonies all around this country. It's about being a democracy. It's about being free to make our own choices and once every few years maybe choose somebody else and go in a different direction. And the problem is that democracy only works if you've got the principle of losers' consent. That you may not like the result of the election, but you accept the result of the election. That is how civilized democracy works. And we've seen 3.5 years now of former prime ministers, the Labour Party, the Liberal Democrats, actually saying that they want to effectively overturn the greatest democratic exercise in the history of our nation. Well, we're not having it, and we're going to stand up, and we're going to fight Labour in every seat in this country, be in no doubt. But there is a second element to living in a 21st century democracy that I'm going to disabuse you of right now. The point about elections is that men and women should be free to stand for election for whatever party they choose, or indeed, if they wish, to stand as independents. Nothing should be done in a democracy for people to allow themselves to stand and be judged by the electorate. And yet, what has been going on this week is nothing short of extraordinary. Now, I have no great love or trust for the Conservative Party. I'm sure many in this room would join me in that. They're very, very good at election after election, making manifesto promises that they actually have no intention of keeping, just because they think it's what people want to hear at the time. I mean, today, the Tory party are talking about reducing immigration. I mean, are you having a laugh? I mean, they put that forward in the last 3 manifestos. And on Brexit, you know, what did the Conservative Party do? In the wake of the result, they put a Remainer in charge. They've let us down dreadfully. But even though I detest Boris Johnson's deal, because it doesn't get Brexit done, it leads us into years more of negotiation and actually binds us by the rule book of the European Club effectively for all time in everything from fisheries to financial services. What we did get last Sunday was a marked change of direction, because he said that we will not extend beyond 2020. And to do that, he's going to have to change the political declaration. And even more significantly, he said, we will negotiate a Canada-style free trade deal and with no political alignment. Now look, I want a clean break Brexit. And a clean break means we leave the institutions. All right? And whether we get that through a Canada-style trade deal or leaving on WTO terms doesn't matter, because neither would bind us to the European Court or to any EU institutions or laws. So what I said was, okay, if that's the ticket that the Conservatives are standing on, Boris, that's fine. You stand in those seats on that ticket, and what we will do is fight the rest of the seats, get people into Parliament, because we need to hold Boris Johnson to those promises he made last Sunday. And that is our job. And if we can get the two of those to work together, we will get something like a meaningful Brexit, something like we voted for. And yet, you would have thought, in response to me being incredibly generous, particularly in the South and the Southwest, where the opposition is the Liberal Democrats, and where, of course, the more of them that got elected, the more likely it would have been we'd face a second referendum, and that's why I did it in many ways. But actually, far from being grateful, what you've seen over the course of the last few days is wall-to-wall abuse coming from the Conservative Party, the refusal on their part to give an inch in terms of cooperation, and now what is going on today, and you don't know this yet, but what is going on right now is nothing short of disgraceful. There is a full-scale attempt going on out there as I speak to stop men and women freely putting themselves up before the UK electorate. You would have thought this was Venezuela, even before Jeremy Corbyn got in. And that is what is happening. Our people, men and women, much like these on the platform here, who put themselves forward, are now coming under relentless phone calls, emails, and abuse, and being told they must stand down. That is happening in 21st century Britain. I think that is a complete and utter disgrace. I really, genuinely do. But of course, that's because they fear us. They fear us. They fear the Brexit Party having a voice in the House of Commons because they know what the precedent is. Way back in 1999, 3 of us got elected to the European Parliament for UKIP. 3 of us. I mean, I thought so too, I got to tell you. Although little did I know what the European Parliament would be like. And one of the benefits of Brexit, of course, from their perspective, is that I will be gone, and they'll be very pleased to see the back of me. But what we were able to do, they've still got Verhofstadt, they'll be fine. But what we were able to do with 3 of us, we'd established a beachhead. And from that beachhead, we were able to move out into the green fields beyond. If we hadn't got that beachhead, we never would have got to the position of winning the 2014 European elections, of terrifying Cameron so much that he thought, I know what I'll do. I'll get rid of this awful Farage bloke and UKIP. I'll just give them a referendum and then the problem will go away. Well, and that's what they fear in Westminster. They fear us getting people into Parliament who genuinely believe in Brexit and who will not, on a 3-line whip, go through the lobby and vote for things they don't believe in and be good little boys. I promise you, our lot get to Westminster, they will not be good little boys and girls. They will stand up and fight for those that put them there. They will stand up and fight for this country to have a clean break Brexit and to be free of the shackles of the European Union. And we do so knowing there are fantastic opportunities for this country. I still cannot, as somebody that went from business into politics, I still cannot get into my head why anybody thinks economically it makes sense to be shackled and tied to 15% of the world's economy, and when that percentage goes down every single year. There is a great, big, exciting world out there. The Commonwealth and America, between them, 2.7 billion people. And do you know, out there, in that wider world, there are people and countries that actually like us. And I think it's very silly of us to have turned our backs on the world in favour of rule from Brussels. So yes, it's about independence. It's about democracy. It's about liberty. It's about us being free to choose our own future. But we will, I am certain, with that new self-confidence, be richer, more prosperous, and have a greater standing across the whole world. I believe in this as strongly as I ever have done, and I will now relentlessly tour the country over the course of the next month, supporting the men and women who've put themselves forward to be part of the democratic process. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have lots of questions from you in the audience. I mentioned in my speech the fact that I didn't particularly trust Boris, the fact that he's reneged on many of his promises. And Rita, who's from Hull, she says, do you trust Boris?
Not really. I mean, Boris has brought more energy and optimism and enthusiasm to the job than his predecessor, although that wouldn't be very hard, would it really? Look, you know, I am delighted that Boris, at 5 minutes to midnight, joined the Brexit cause. You know, but he did. He did, and actually, his presence in that campaign was very important, and we're all grateful to him for making, for keeping one of the articles he'd written and discarding the other. But I think Boris Johnson, I think for Boris and the current Conservatives, David, Brexit is an issue. It's an issue to deal with, and it's an issue to use in the election to try and get elected. But for him, it's not the issue. This is not within, I don't believe it's deep within him. And I think if he was allowed to get back in, and look, I think the odds are there will be a small Conservative majority just because Labour are in so much trouble everywhere. But if he's in the House of Commons and we're not there to challenge at every step of the way what he's doing, then I fear that we'll finish up with something that is Brexit in name only. And Brexit in name only would leave us tied to the institutions. We've got him in the last week to significantly shift his position. That is progress. We now need to be there to make sure that he keeps his promises. On his own, I fear he might go back on them.
Michelle actually mentioned in her speech about tactical voting. In fact, Sue from Briggs says her Tory MP voted for the withdrawal agreement and then voted for Boris's deal. So she really doesn't know what to do. Does she vote for the Tory MP or does she not vote? What should she do? And I think it's something that lots of people are struggling with.
I think this is very interesting. In the wake of what I did on Monday, and it was genuinely putting what I thought was the national interest, putting country before party, our own party interest, I had expected a degree of reciprocity from the Conservatives. I mean, bear in mind there are 142 seats in this country that the Conservative Party have never won and never, ever will win. People simply won't vote for the Conservatives in many of those areas, and I suspect some of the Hull seats are very much in that category. And it would have made sense for Boris Johnson to say, well, I'll tell you what we'll do in response to this. We will give you some seats where you stand to beat Labour, and we won't put up any candidates. They did no such thing. All they've tried to do, and they're still doing it as we speak, is to try to use all sorts of tactics to get our people to stand down, to try and stop a free and fair election from taking place. And in doing that, the goodwill that Brexit Party voters in those 317 seats would have had towards the Conservatives is, I detect, evaporating. I was bombarded yesterday by emails from people saying, because of their behaviour, we're going to go in and write Brexit Party on the ballot paper. And I have to say, I was asked this question last night. You know, living in the, as I do, the soft South, of course, you know, where I live, they are Conservative MPs in all the adjoining constituencies. But frankly, I can't vote Conservative. I can't vote Conservative given the way they've behaved this week. So I think there is a dilemma for people, and I accept that, and I have to apologise, I think, to a lot of people who desperately wanted to vote for us and can't in those seats. I do apologise for that. I did it. It was a big strategic decision. I think it was the right thing to do. You can't make big decisions in life without upsetting somebody. But hey, I tell you what, there's 300 other seats where there are Brexit Party candidates. Let's get some of them elected, shall we?
Well said. Michelle, you wanted to make a point about this.
Yeah, I would just add to what Nigel said and also what I mentioned a few minutes ago. People have to disregard this talk of tactical voting and strategic voting. And as we've mentioned, Nigel has already mentioned, we have tried and tried and tried to create some kind of working together, grouping, alliance, whatever you want to call it. We've absolutely done our best. And to all of those people, and I mentioned it earlier, who say that we should stand down, our message is very simple. We will not stand down, thank you very much. We will stand up, and we will continue to stand up for you and for Brexit.
Add more to that, actually. Yeah, I think these points are so fundamental. Even after what I'd done, I was accused that I might split the Leave vote in the rest of the country. Well, in seats around this area, in all three of the seats where we're standing in this part of the country, we are the challenger to the Labour Party. And the only reason we might not beat the Labour Party is because the Conservative Party will split our vote. Yes. You know, I went to them in September and said, look, we could, if you want, build with some quite senior Labour figures, Brexit Party and Conservative Party, we could build a Leave alliance. That Leave alliance could contest this general election and it would win an 80, 100 seat majority. And they rejected it. And that tells you all you need to know. They are putting the interests of the Conservative Party above the interests of getting Brexit delivered. I have put country before party. They, I'm afraid still, they put party before country. It's got to be country first. It is with us, and I bitterly regret that they will split our vote in many of those constituencies. Doesn't mean we can't win, just makes it a bit harder. But I do think there is a message in those seats. If you're Labour and you're Leave, you can't vote for them. But if you're Conservative in those seats, for goodness sake, vote for the Brexit Party, because that's the way you get people into Parliament that'll keep Boris honest.
I'm just back to your point about intimidation. I know from my own point of view, I'm getting hundreds and hundreds of emails telling me to stand down, that I'm splitting the Leave vote, that my behaviour is appalling. And so the tactics of intimidation is because they are frightened, I know that. What about postal voting? Because we saw in Peterborough Mike Green, a brilliant candidate, we all campaigned for him. He lost because the postal voting was very aberrant in Peterborough, wasn't it? It was very, very high indeed. Over 20%, I believe. 30. So what are we going to do to stop postal vote rigging?
Well, look, the slogan that we launched the Brexit Party on back in April this year was change politics for good. And what that says is that for us, Brexit is the start of a huge political transformation and reform that is much needed in this country. You know, this week's absolutely proved to me how rotten the whole establishment is. I mean, the very thought that what they do is they first try to slag off their opponent, they then try and buy them off with peerages. I mean, this is how corrupt the whole system is. So we need to change politics for good. David, the postal voting system was put there for people who served overseas, for people who were 94 and infirm, for those who had a good reason that said it wasn't easy to get to the polling station. Some countries in Europe don't even have a postal vote possibility. And in those days, I'm only going back to pre-Blair, in those days 2 or 3% of people voted by post. Now it's 20% plus that vote by post. Yes, it can be convenient, I get that, but it is so open to abuse and intimidation. We've seen court case after court case on this issue. I'm not going to be specific about constituencies. I haven't got time to spend with the lawyers. But we all know this is being abused, and one of the reforms we want to fight for is scrapping the current postal voting register and replacing it with those who work overseas and 94-year-olds who are in wheelchairs and are infirm. That's the first thing I think we should do. The second thing we need to do, we've got to have a voting system that is more reflective of the way this country is. You know, how can a political party get millions of votes and no representation in Parliament? That clearly doesn't make sense. And having once again turned down the offered peerage so that I would disappear and toe the line, let's abolish the House of Lords. It's no good.
I want to respond to the point about abuse, what David's just raised, because it's not easy to stand here and to raise your head above the parapet. I told you the story about the businessman that almost whispered to me that he's a Brexiteer because it's not acceptable for him to come out, for want of a better word, amongst his colleagues. And during the next few weeks, we will be abused. Sorry, because if you've not stood before, you don't know what's coming. We will be abused. We will be called every name under the sun, and we will experience so many underhand tactics, I'm sure. And I would ask every one of us just to be mindful. When they go low, we need to be going high. We need to not rise to their intimidation. We need to not play along with their games. We know what we're doing. We know what we stand for. We believe in our cause. And just remember that when they go low, where do we go? High.
Yeah, absolutely, I agree with that totally. Yeah. Don't get in the gutter with them. Yeah.
Can I just, Nigel, can I just mention British Steel? Why, I think this is a very pertinent question, you know, given the EU regulations, why can't we bail out failing British industries? British Steel, a very good example of this. Surely it's only right and proper the UK can bail out a failing industry.
Well, we've been bound, as indeed our entire economy has for decades, completely bound by European law. And, you know, one of the other aspects of this withdrawal agreement we need to challenge and challenge and challenge is it's the intention of Brussels that we stay forever within EU state aid rules, even though we're supposed to have left. We couldn't prevent Chinese dumping steel on the world markets, smashing the price and putting out much steel production in the Western world. We were unable to stop that because of EU rules, and we're now unable to put money into strategic British industries. No, what Boris Johnson's government now wants to do is to sell a chunk of it off to the Chinese. That, I think, is a mistake in itself. We must be free to make our own strategic industrial decisions. That is why we have to have a clean break Brexit.
One of the other things that struck me being in the European Parliament is that we've been told for a long time, oh, there's no such thing as a European army, there's no way, they're never going to have it. I was there when they said we are going to have a European army. That will undermine NATO. It's not on, is it?
David, the remarkable thing about this whole debate is that because Boris put a figure on the side of a bus that was a bit on the high side, we're told we won the referendum through lying. They have been lying for 50 years. They told my parents it was about trade and cooperation and wouldn't affect our sovereignty, and so they voted yes in the 75 referendum, and they go on lying about the true nature of the European project. I had the opportunity to debate with Nick Clegg back in 2014, he of the genius Fixed-Term Parliaments Act and many other things, and it was really interesting. I said one of the reasons I don't want to be a member of the European Union is it's becoming a militarized union that will, I think, destroy NATO. And his response was, Nigel Farage is a dangerous fantasist for even suggesting there could ever be a European army. And as David said, you know, it's full steam ahead now for a full European defense union by 2025. It will destroy our relationship with America, Australia, Canada, New Zealand. It has even more worrying implications for sharing information than it does for military cooperation. And I want to hear that we will take no part in it. Because if we take no part in it, it will not actually have any military or intelligence significance. And I heard the other week when I was in Brussels, both Juncker and indeed van der Leyen and Verhofstadt all saying we need to show our muscle and strength on the world stage by military intervention. And I think that actually, far from being a project of peace, will take us in a very bad direction. We want no part of it, and I hope that our leaving the European Union actually reforms the EU, changes the European structures for the rest of Europe too. And if it's a Europe of nation states cooperating, trading, having reciprocity, being friendly, we want to be a part of that. What we don't want is to be governed from Brussels by an undemocratic set of institutions who are absolutely intent on building a global empire. I hope by doing this we don't just save ourselves, but we do actually save the rest of Europe too. I really do.
Final line, Nigel. We have 4 weeks today to the general election. What's your message to people out there about the Brexit Party, about going out to vote, not being apathetic, making sure that every single vote counts?
If you're a Brexiteer, however disenchanted you are 3.5 years on, this is your chance to set the record straight. There are constituencies in this country, many in this county, in which we are challenging the established Labour Party. We've got a chance of winning many of these seats. We'll only do it if Brexiteers unite. Forget whether they're Conservative, forget whether they're Labour, forget whether, actually in the referendum, it was the first time they ever voted. Here is our chance to get back at an establishment that has betrayed us over the course of the last 3.5 years. Don't get mad, get even.
Hey, well said. Thank you very much indeed, Nigel. Thank you to all the candidates. Right, ladies and gentlemen, could you be upstanding, grab your boards, and the answer to the question is Brexit. So, ladies and gentlemen, what do we want? Brexit. And when do we want it? Now. What do we want? Brexit. When do we want it? Now. Thank you very much. Have a very safe trip home and cast your votes wisely. Thank you.